Alrighty, so we're back. That first part actually ended up being nearly half an hour long. That was much longer than I intended. So I'll try to keep things concise here. We're back. Character's still here. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab the directional light again. Control L. And we'll go ahead and we'll brighten the scene back up to kind of like a noontime. That's fine. Well, actually, let's do like maybe a little bit more overhead. Like there's good. Okay, so that's there. We're gonna go ahead and we'll grab our character and we'll move them back over here, back towards the sun. Sure, why not? Okay. So for the next part of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over setting up some logic. And what I mean by that is we're going to come back into our example character here. In the construction script, we're going to do a few things that we're going to want to set up. First thing in the class settings, when you click on this, two things you're going to want to enable. Run construction script on drag and then run construction script in sequencer. You also want to make sure that that is enabled if it's not already. And what those two things are going to do for you is it's basically anytime you move the character, it's going to run this logic. Or anytime you are working in sequencer, it's going to constantly be running this logic. So you want to make sure that you aren't sticking anything too heavy here, but some examples I'm going to show you that kind of only work when they're here, like set leader pose component, all that good stuff. Super important to set that up in the construction script. And also if you have any morph targets that you're going to be calling either at begin play or you're going to want to show up in sequencer, you can set those up to get called here as well, and I'll show you how to do that. But the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to take every component except for the head, except for the mesh. I like to set all my other components to follow the head mesh. So we'll take all these and we've got them all selected. We'll drag and drop, and it's going to bring them all in here for us. First thing we're going to do, drag off a construction script. And there's several ways to do animation with a modular character. The way I find for me works the best is the set leader pose component. Technically, there are 3 different ways to do it. I'm going to show you the set leader pose component here. Epic has some really good documentation themselves actually on the different ways of doing that. And the pros and cons to each. But for me, set leader pose component works the best. So I'm going to search here for set leader pose component. And now I'm going to actually go ahead and click the mesh. And actually we're going to want to disconnect this, break this link. And we want the new leader to be the mesh, which for us is the head. And then all these other ones here, we're going to take and we're going to hook to the target. And so now what that's doing for us, it's doing several things. But the most important is that when we go back and on the mesh, we set up a animation blueprint. It's going to automatically tell all these other components, so all our other skeletal mesh components, to follow that initial mesh. And I'll show you why that's important. So actually we'll start with this disconnected so you can see what happens when you don't set this up. So I can come here and I'll click on the mesh, and under animation blueprint, we'll go ahead and we'll do the master F4 because that's already created for us. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that. And that's going to get loaded in. So you'll see what happens right away, even before we leave the viewport. So the head is now animated, the rest of the body is not. So it's disconnected from the rest of the body. What you may be tempted to do, and the mistake I see a lot of people do, is they will go in and they will actually put that NMBP on every component individually. which can work, right? That can look okay. Like, so you can see these two now are moving together, and that's fine. The problem is once you start adding logic and physics and things like that, and different parts of the body are doing different things, they can still actually disconnect. They can be on different frames of animation, and it's not going to look correct. So I'm going to actually go ahead and we'll reset that to none. And then if I come here and I hook this node back up, and I then click compile and save, now all of the body is following whatever the head is doing. So whatever frame of animation the head is on, the rest of the body will be there as well. So if I come in here into the viewport, so you can see the pose has been updated. If I simulate the level, it'll start actually running that animation. So there's our character, and it's just an easier way of setting that up. So back here, you see we're going to get a ton of errors, and that's fine. That's actually related to the AnimBP. For those of you using Exandria characters, using this animation blueprint, I'll actually show you just really quickly how to fix this. The problem is it's looking for the character custom, because when you're setting up an Exandria character, you set a body weight, so it's trying to reference that, and it has no idea how to reference that because this is not an Exandria character class. So we come in here and we'll just go to the animation blueprint. So we'll click on that. It's going to open it for us automatically, and it's going to take us right there. So if we come in here and we go to actually we can go back here to the error log. That'll make it a little easier to find where this error is getting coming from. So right here, so BP character custom, target, body weight, whatever. That's what's throwing the errors here, and it's going to constantly throw those errors because it's constantly trying to update the animation. So all we're going to do is we're going to grab this BP character custom, right click, and we're going to come down here and click convert to validated get. So it's going to check basically that the character is the proper Exandria custom character class before it tries to set this body weight. Otherwise, it's just not going to set it. So we'll drag off there, is valid, compile, save, and you'll see it doesn't actually mess with anything in terms of animation. So if I clear this out here and I go ahead and I simulate again, everything's fine. It doesn't actually change the animation. I believe it's for some physics stuff. I'd have to ask her on that. But essentially now if I stop, no errors. So nothing's getting thrown up because that problem's fixed. It's not running that logic because it's not a valid Exandria character class. So quick fix for that if you are running an individual character and you want to use the included animation blueprints. Anyways, back into here. We'll close this out now because we don't need that. So that's set up. Our construction script is set up. Now for morph targets, what you want to do is you'll come here in here to the event graph. And for me personally, I like to also call this off of begin play. It's kind of important to have that. But I'll come here, and since this is just a blank, all the movement and all that stuff isn't set up, that's all irrelevant for what we're doing. But we'll go ahead and we'll do a sequence in case we need to add some more logic later on. But here in our sequence, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an event, and we're going to add a custom event. Actually, want to do that here first. Not dragging off from it. Add a custom event, and we'll call it set morph targets. Okay, then we can take that and we'll move it down here. Why not? Off of begin play, and we're going to call that set morph targets. Okay, and then we'll also come here to the construction script and call that as well. And so what that's going to do is as soon as the actor is in the level, in this case the character, it's going to call that. event before you even ever press play. So when it builds the character, it's going to try and set up these morph targets. And so then again, same thing. And I recommend doing this. It's a little bit more performance heavy to do it this way. But I recommend doing it this way because sometimes with certain morph targets, they actually will overlap across different meshes. So like, for example, I'll show you one example would be like between the head and the torso. If I'm wanting to set the chest size, those two overlap. So if I set one without setting the other, it's going to cause some really strange and kind of weird artifacting. Not all the time, but you know, with certain morphs. So we have all of our skeletal meshes here. So we'll drag these here. And then what we're going to want to do is we will drag off the mesh. And didn't mean to do that. Set morph target. Okay. So when you pull this node in, what I would recommend doing first, and this is just kind of cheesy just to save you a little bit of time. We'll hook all these up, and then we're just going to duplicate this several times because chances are you're probably going to want several morph targets running at the same time, not just one. So just leave this blank and then just take this and then just duplicate it a couple times. And that's Control D, and that'll duplicate all that logic. And I'll usually do 2 or 3, but just leave one blank. That way it saves you some time later on as you add more of these. You can just keep duplicating. And calling it blank, it's just not going to do anything. But where do we get these morph targets from? So you can see here. So we have morph target name, and then we have a value. Now, typically, a value will be 0 to 1. You can actually go over 1, or you can even set a negative value in this number. I'm not going to take the time to show you what all that does and you know, messing with it. Some morphs will work better with that than others. But play around with it. You can actually push some of the morphs beyond like their standard limits. If you need things a little bit more extreme for your situation, but you know, you can do a couple different things. But to find these, what we're going to do is over here we're going to click on our mesh, and we've got the head. And actually, for the case of you know what, let's do the head. I'll show you a couple different ones here. So this is going to open the head. Okay, so come over here to Morph Target Previewer. And you've got all of these morph targets. The head is going to have a lot of them, but some of them are going to be on more specific, more relevant, I should say, body components. So if you're looking for something and it's not here, it could just be because it's not part of that part of the mesh. The head is going to have almost all of them, and you know, like for example, so if I call, let's look for, we'll do chest size. Let's do that. So chest size positive, so it's on the head, but obviously the chest isn't here, so it's not going to affect anything on the head, but it will affect the chest, obviously. So we'll copy this, copy and just right click and click copy names, and we'll come back over here and we'll blow that out, and then Control V, we'll paste it, and we'll set that to a value of, we'll say 1. Let's just go to the max so you can see what's going on. So we got value 1. Okay. So right now this event, we're setting morph targets. We've got it set up on all of this for all of our mesh components. It's getting called at begin play. It's also getting called in construction script. So now if I go here and I compile and save, so you'll see right away the chest size gets larger. Now what you may notice is in here, it might not update right away, and that is actually an Unreal bug that has been a plague upon us forever, which is why I said to set up where it ticks it in the construction script as well as sequencer, because when you're trying to animate and your morph targets aren't showing up correctly, that's going to be a problem. But if you watch the character here, you'll see what happens when as soon as I click simulate, it applies the morph targets correctly. And then if I click stop, it takes them away. Now that should be happening immediately, and you'll see sometimes that does happen. It does sometimes actually work correctly, where it will display correctly during construction. I don't know why it doesn't do that all the time. Again, that's just an Unreal bug. So don't worry about that too much. If it doesn't show up right away, you can just click simulate. There you go. You're fine. It's there. It works. You're not worried about it too much. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll set up a few of these, just more generic morph targets. That way you can kind of see sort of what the deal is with all of them. So we'll go back here into our example character. And we'll play with a few more. So we've got the chest size. We can do... I'll save the facial ones for now, just because I'll show those off when we get more into sequencer and control rig. That's kind of a better place to run those versus trying to do this logic independently. But if you did not want to do a face board or any other means of controlling your facial morph targets, you can call them manually, and you can see that in the viewport. But we'll do let's do hips bigger, sure. Why not? So we'll come back down here, same thing here, and then Control V. And we'll set that to a value of 1. Okay, perfect. We've only got the 1 blank left, so let's duplicate that again. And we'll come here. Perfect. And we'll grab one more just for the giggles here. What should we do? We'll grab, actually, let's grab some off of the torso. And so I'm going to show you here on the torso. So you can see here, there's a lot less morph targets because we're only going to have the ones that are relevant to that portion of the mesh. Okay, so for now, actually, we've already got the chest size, we've already got the hips. Sure, we'll do the butt as well. Why not? Come down here and same thing. Now, if you don't have to worry about any of that happening, if, for example, like one of these doesn't have that morph target, it's just gonna return null. It's not gonna do anything, so you don't need to worry about it throwing errors, anything like that. So we got in the viewport. So, and again, you'll see it's still having the issue where it's not working during construction. But if I click simulate, it will automatically work. And it's applying those to the character. So, kind of interesting. Again, just another Unreal bug. Nothing to worry about. And when you're playing, it'll display just fine. So we'll come back in here. So that is how you're going to set up your morph targets and your leader pose component, getting everything ready so the animations are synced properly. I will actually go ahead and I'm going to leave this one here. I'll split this up into an additional part where we're going to get into materials and stuff. That way you can just kind of watch the videos that are relevant to what you're trying to do. So I'll see you guys, and we'll get back in with doing some materials and kind of modifying the outfits and the character a little bit further for our liking.